Many people probably haven't heard the name Bernard Arnault, but almost everyone definitely knows brands like Louis Vuitton, Dior, Gucci, Moet, or Hennessy. And those are just a few of the many luxury brands Bernard and his family own, all under the world's largest luxury goods company, LVMH. This enormous empire owns more than 75 brands, has around 6,000 stores worldwide, and generated more than 21 billion euros in profit in just 2022. That's 2.4 million per hour. And because of this, Bernard, as a majority shareholder, CEO, and chairman of this conglomerate, can certainly be called the uncrowned king of luxury. Let's take a look at how he built his empire and became even wealthier than Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, or Elon Musk. When you look at the Forbes billionaires list, you will immediately see that it's filled with owners of companies that provide goods and services we all use every day. Tech giants like Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Microsoft, retailers such as Walmart and Zara, media, telecom, shipping, and mining companies. And the list goes on. But can you see the pattern here? Makes sense, right? The more people need your product, the more valuable is your company. And then there's Bernard with LVMH, which strictly sells luxury goods that no one actually needs, and yet he is currently at the top of this list. Why is that? When it comes to luxury items, you are not actually buying the item itself. You are buying prestige, status, sense of accomplishment. A study published in the Journal of Marketing in 2016 found that these factors are the biggest reasons why people buy these things. All are driven by the desire to make a statement about yourself and your superiority. That's also why many consumers who buy luxury goods are not in a financial position to be able to afford them. One way to explain this is that many consumers do not act rationally or in a way that is in their best financial interest. However, some people perceive non-luxury goods as inferior simply by virtue of them being non-luxury. They also come to the conclusion that higher-priced goods are of better quality. For some consumers, a luxury good can go a long way in increasing self-esteem or providing a sense of belonging. As you can see, it's pretty simple. People want to reach for higher status, and the easiest way of achieving this feeling is to just buy something that seems unreachable, even if they can't afford it. Designer handbags, luxury watches, or clothes seen on the cover of magazines. And Bernard knows this and built his whole empire around this desire. Bernard was born on the 5th of March, 1949, in a small town in northern France. His mother taught him piano and always had a fascination for Dior. His father owned the civil engineering company, so naturally, Bernard wanted to follow in his footsteps. When Bernard was 21, he graduated from the Engineering University in Paris, and just 1 year later, in 1971, he took control of his father's construction firm. 8 years later, he changed the company's name and shifted its focus to real estate. In 1981, Bernard left France and went to live in the United States, mostly because he was disappointed with the results of the French presidential election. This decision would soon change the course of his life. Famously, on his first trip to the United States, Bernard went to New York. He took a taxi at the Kennedy airport and he talked to the taxi driver, who had no idea a casual comment with this French businessman would plant the seed of the biggest luxury goods group in history. When the taxi driver told Bernard he loved France, Bernard asked him what he knew about France and if he knew who was the French president at that time. The taxi driver replied, "I don't know who the French president is, but I know Christian Dior." This sparked Bernard's interest in fashion and luxury and forever changed his interest in the industrial world. Bernard started looking and found an unvalued gem, Dior. After the death of its founder, Christian Dior, in 1957, the fashion house struggled to hold its own. It became known less for revolutionizing 1940s women's wear and more for producing safe, conservative options French ladies could wear to lunch. And Bernard was already familiar with the brand as his mother had been a particular fan. At the time, Dior was owned by the nearly bankrupt textile company Boussac, and Bernard was able to buy it in 1984 for a symbolic 1 French franc. Bernard laid off 9,000 workers in 2 years, after which he acquired the nickname the Terminator. He then sold nearly all of the assets, keeping only a few, but most importantly, the one he was interested in, Dior. After he acquired the company, Bernard hired the first Italian designer to the company. He also appointed British designer John Galliano as Christian Dior's head. This brought him a lot of criticism from the French designers who were not happy with the changes. To his critics, Bernard said that talent had no nationality. 2 years later, the company was once again profitable. This successful investment was his passageway to the luxury business world. After seeing the potential of luxury goods, Bernard had the idea of creating a group of luxury brands. So in 1987, he worked with Alain Chevalier, CEO of Moet Hennessy, and Henri Rackamer, president of Louis Vuitton, to form the now legendary LVMH. Bernard then started aggressively increasing his stake in the company, sometimes buying stocks worth up to 600 million euros per week. This strategy made him the largest shareholder just 1 year later in 1988. He owned 37% of the company at that time. In the next year, 39-year-old Bernard became chairman and CEO of the company and increased his stake to 43.5%. What did Bernard do as a newly elected CEO of LVMH? Of course, he went shopping. Not for clothes, cars, or houses, but for companies. He started buying literally everything he could, growing his empire. These are the most noteworthy acquisitions: Celine in 1996, Sephora in 1997, Tag Heuer in 1999, Gucci in 1999. Around this time, he became the richest person in fashion, topping Zara's Amancio Ortega, Fendi in 2001, Bulgari in 2011, Tiffany & Co. in 2020 for a whopping $15.8 billion. This is also the largest acquisition to this day. It's said that Bernard often used predatory ways and tactics in order to get companies that he wanted. The most famous example is an attempt to take over Hermès, a controversy that spanned over 14 years. In 2001, LVMH acquired an initial stake in Hermès of 4.9% through subsidiaries and continued to accumulate shares in its Paris-based rival by secretly buying equity derivatives through financial intermediaries and subsidiaries, with each keeping holdings below 5%. In October 2010, LVMH announced that it had acquired a cumulative 14.2% stake, and in December 2011 announced that raised its stake in Hermès to 22.6% with 16% voting rights as of 2013. Hermès filed a complaint against LVMH for secretly building up ownership in Hermès. As a response, LVMH filed a complaint against Hermès for blackmail, slander, and unfair competition. Following the culmination of an investigation by the French financial services watchdog, which found that LVMH had secretly bought shares in rival Hermès to build a stake in the iconic design house, not merely to make a financial investment as LVMH had claimed, and an intervention by a French court, LVMH announced that it would distribute its 23% stake in Hermès to its shareholders and agreed not to buy more shares in Hermès for the next 5 years. On top of that, LVMH was fined $13.2 million for not disclosing information regarding the increase of ownership in Hermès to the public. LVMH's shares in Hermès were fully distributed such that LVMH no longer held any Hermès shares as of December 31st, 2015. After this incident, a member of the Hermès clan called him a wolf in Cashmere for the predatory ways he attempted to take over their company. As of today, LVMH owned over 75 brands. So, how did Bernard seemingly suddenly become the richest person in the world? Bernard was near the very top of the billionaires list for many years. Few times even became the richest man, but that was just for a very short time. Once, in 2021, it was just for a few hours. However, since he's not vocal, flashy, and active on social media like many other billionaires, most people probably never heard of him. However, in December 2022, Bernard, with a net worth of $220 billion, passed Elon Musk to become the world's richest person. He still holds that title today. Crazy thing is that just 2 years prior, in 2020, his net worth was $76 billion, just 1/3 of what it was in 2022. How is this possible? There are two main factors that made claiming the top spot possible. The first one is the pandemic. People were sitting at home and couldn't spend their money anywhere else but online shopping. And this includes shopping for luxury goods. In just 2021, LVMH sales were up 16% compared to pre-pandemic levels. This of course translated to the increased price of shares of LVMH and Bernard's net worth. But this one alone wouldn't make him the world's richest person. since Elon Musk was worth over $300 billion in 2021. Then in 2022, tech stocks were decimated, losing 30% on average. This didn't directly make Bernard richer, but helped him claim that title of the richest man in the world. For example, Tesla and Meta both lost 70% of their value from its all-time high in 2021. Although the tech stocks are recovering, Bernard still holds his title. When you're the king of luxury, you have to live like one, and Bernard definitely does. He owns an island valued at $35 million in the Bahamas, a private and exclusive property accessible through invitation only. He also owns a massive chateau-style waterfront mansion in Saint-Tropez and owned a private jet worth $40 million, which he sold just a few months ago after people on Twitter started tracking his location. The result now is that no one can see where I go because I rent planes when I use private planes, Bernard said. He is also an avid art collector, owning works from artists such as Damien Hirst, Pablo Picasso, and Andy Warhol, and this doesn't include artworks in his gallery in Paris. Truly the king of luxury. So what do you think? Is all this wealth deserved? Let's discuss in the comments. Have a nice day, and see you soon.